Yes. Speaking of the Supreme Court, I have to ask you about Supreme Court Justice Alito.
Yeah.
There is now a second story about another flag that was flown outside of his vacation home that has also been tied to the January 6th attack on the Capitol and the Stop the Steal. I want to ask you, though, how can Americans have faith in the decision of the Supreme Court when also in the coming weeks there will be two decisions based on January 6th and Donald Trump, when there are two justices with perceived biases at the least about this issue? Of course, Samuel Alito and these flags, but also Justice Thomas and his wife Ginny. His wife Ginny, of course, was texting Trump's then chief of staff, urging him to keep working to overturn the election. So, how can Americans trust the outcome of the case with these instances?
Leanne, with all due respect, I think there's an enormous double standard that is playing out here, which is the Democrats in the Senate have mounted for several years a very concerted effort to try to smear the Supreme Court, to try to discredit the Supreme Court, and to try to intimidate the Supreme Court justices. That has included Chuck Schumer going to the steps of the Supreme Court, calling out the justices by name, threatening them, saying if they did not vote the way he wanted in upcoming cases, they would, quote, reap the whirlwind. You have justices who demonize, or rather you have senators who demonize justices. And the two in particular you mentioned, Clarence Thomas, there is a concerted effort to smear Justice Thomas, and now Justice Alito. Let me tell you, I know both of these justices personally. They are extraordinary jurists. They are men of impeccable character. They are some of the greatest Supreme Court justices ever to serve on the court. And the reason for this attack is the left is angry. They control the executive branch. They control the Senate, and they look at the Supreme Court as the one branch of government they don't control. It's why, if Chuck Schumer and the Democrats were to get one more Democrat senator, they would end the filibuster and they would pack the United States Supreme Court. They would grow it from 9 justices to 13 and add 4 left-wing justices. Why? Because they want hard left justices to impose their policy agenda through the courts. I think it is really disturbing, this effort to undermine the credibility of the court. And I would note, it also is manifested with very real threats of violence. We saw in the wake of the Dobbs decision, night after night, hundreds of angry, threatening protesters outside of the homes of Supreme Court justices, screaming at them, screaming at their family. And we saw Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, refuse to enforce federal law. It is a crime to protest at the home of a federal judge to try to influence the outcome of a case. And yet Merrick Garland refused to arrest anyone, order the DOJ not to arrest anyone. When questioned by the Senate, why does he pick and choose which law to follow? He refused to answer. And I would point out, those threats were not hypothetical. You had one deranged leftist from California, flew from Simi Valley to Bethesda, Maryland, with the intent of murdering Justice Brett Kavanaugh. He had duct tape and knives and guns, and thankfully was arrested just outside Justice Kavanaugh's home. So I think all of this is part of a broader effort to try to smear the court, and I think it's entirely one-sided, and it's a double standard that doesn't make sense.